You light the grill in your backyard. Meat goes on. Smoke rises. You assume fire has always been for one thing, cooking dinner. You'd be wrong. For nearly 1 million years, your ancestors kept fire burning, long before cooking became a daily habit. So what were they actually using it for? For decades, the story felt simple. Early humans discovered fire, started cooking meat, and cooking gave them so much extra energy that their brains grew larger and their bodies changed forever. It's a clean story. It's also, according to some researchers, missing a piece. Anthropologist Ran Barkai at Tel Aviv University has spent years studying one of the oldest known sites of regular human fire use, Qesem Cave, where burnt animal bones date back hundreds of thousands of years. And when his team ran the numbers on cooking alone, something didn't add up. Building and maintaining a fire takes real effort. You need fuel, you need time, you need someone tending it constantly. When researchers calculated the actual energy cost of keeping a fire burning just to cook meat versus the extra calories gained from eating it cooked, the math came out surprisingly close. Too close, in fact, to fully explain why early humans would commit to something this demanding every single day for hundreds of thousands of years. So if cooking alone doesn't fully explain it, what does? There's another clue that points in the same direction. At a site called Gesher Benot Ya'aqov in Israel, researcher Irit Zohar at Tel Aviv University studied fish teeth pulled from ancient lakeside mud, dating back roughly 780,000 years. The teeth showed signs of exposure to moderate heat, not the intense, direct heat of a fish tossed straight into open flames, but something closer to slow, controlled warming near a fire. It's some of the oldest solid evidence we have of humans deliberately preparing food with fire. But notice what it doesn't show. It doesn't explain why humans were willing to keep fires burning constantly, day after day, for hundreds of thousands of years before that kind of behavior became common everywhere. Barkai's team proposes something different. Early humans weren't just hunting small animals they could eat in one sitting. They were sometimes taking down massive prey, animals large enough to provide far more meat than a small group could finish before it spoiled. And massive prey attracts massive competition. Lions, hyenas, and other scavengers can smell a fresh kill from a long distance, and they don't wait politely for humans to finish eating. This is where fire earns its keep in a whole new way. A blazing fire does two things almost immediately. It keeps dangerous scavengers away from a kill site, giving a small group of humans enough safety to actually process an enormous amount of meat. And smoke, produced constantly by that same fire, dries and preserves meat over time, the exact same principle still used in smokehouses today. Meat that would spoil within a day or two in the open air can last dramatically longer once it's been smoked. In other words, fire's first job might not have been the stove. It might have been the security system and the refrigerator combined into one. Let's picture how this might have actually unfolded. A hunting party brings down a massive animal, far more meat than they can carry back to camp or finish eating quickly. Before anything else, someone builds a fire, right there at the kill site, not to eat immediately, but to hold the ground. The flames and smoke push back, circling scavengers already gathering at the edges of the clearing, drawn by the smell of blood. While the fire burns, the group gets to work. Large sections of meat are cut into strips and hung near the smoke, not directly in the flames, but close enough to be slowly dried and cured over hours. This isn't fast. It takes patience, attention, someone staying close to the fire the entire time, feeding it just enough fuel to keep the smoke thick and steady without letting the flames die down or grow dangerously large. But it means that instead of losing most of an enormous kill to spoilage or to hyenas circling just beyond the firelight, the group walks away with meat that will actually last. Somewhere in the middle of all this, someone gets hungry. A piece of meat sitting a little too close to the flame gets pulled out, already partly cooked from the heat and smoke surrounding it the whole time. It tastes different, maybe better, maybe easier to chew, easier on tired jaws after a long day of hunting and hauling. Nobody sets out that day specifically to invent cooking. It happens almost as a side effect of a fire that was already burning for an entirely different reason. Here's the twist that makes this even more interesting. Cooking may not have been the original point of fire at all. It might have been a bonus discovery, something humans stumbled into while using fire for defense and preservation, that turned out to be so valuable it eventually became one of fire's most important uses. Richard Wrangham at Harvard has argued for years that cooking transformed human evolution, shrinking our digestive tracts and fueling bigger brains with easier-to-absorb calories. That part of the story likely still holds true. What's shifting is the assumption about which use came first and which one came along for the ride. Evidence for controlled fire use goes back possibly a million years or more, though it stayed rare and inconsistent for an extremely long stretch of time. It wasn't until around 400,000 years ago that fire use became widespread and routine across human sites. That's a strange gap if cooking alone was the immediate, obvious payoff. But it makes more sense if fire's first real value was protecting a rare, valuable kill long enough to actually preserve it. A problem that only mattered when hunting large prey successfully, which wasn't an everyday event for early, small hunting bands. A rare skill, used only when it truly counted, would naturally spread more slowly than something useful every single day. Think about how much of this logic still shows up in your life today, completely unchanged. Bacon, beef jerky, smoked salmon. Every one of these foods exists because smoke slows down decay, the exact same principle a hunting band was relying on hundreds of thousands of years ago at the edge of a fresh kill. Before refrigerators existed, smokehouses were how entire families and communities kept meat edible through long winters, hanging strips of pork or fish in a small enclosed shed filled with slow, steady smoke for days at a time. That tradition didn't come from nowhere. It's a direct, unbroken line back to a hunting band standing guard over a kill site with nothing but fire and patience. Campers still build fires partly to keep animals away from their food and their camp overnight, not just to cook a meal. Anyone who has ever stored food away from a campsite specifically because of bears is following an instinct and a strategy that goes back further than most people realize. Even a modern backyard barbecue quietly does both jobs at once without anyone thinking twice about it, cooking the meat while the smoke and heat keep curious animals at a distance. The next time you smell smoke drifting from a grill or reach for a strip of jerky, you're tapping into something far older than cooking itself. You're touching one of the first survival systems your ancestors ever built. A single fire doing double duty as a shield and a preservation method, with dinner arriving almost by accident. It's easy to assume every ancient invention followed a straight line, a problem, then a clever solution built directly for it. But sometimes the real story is messier and more interesting than that. A solution built for one urgent problem, quietly solving a second one, nobody was even trying to fix yet. You light the grill in your backyard, meat goes on, smoke rises, and somewhere underneath that simple, familiar routine, an ancient logic is still quietly at work, one that has almost nothing to do with why you think you're doing it. If discoveries like this make you rethink the things you take for granted, stick around. There's a lot more about how you got here that's still worth uncovering.